Free Fall, Laurie Anderson, here on Democracy Now!, Breaking the Sound Barrier. I'm Amy Goodman. On Friday, President Bush signed into law the American Servicemembers Protection Act of 2002, which will supposedly protect U.S. service members from the International Criminal Court. The new law authorizes the use of military force to liberate any American or citizen of a U.S. allied country being held by the court. This provision, dubbed the Hague Invasion Clause, has caused a strong reaction from U.S. allies around the world, particularly in the Netherlands. The law also provides for the withdrawal of U.S. military assistance from countries ratifying the ICC treaty, the International Criminal Court Treaty, and restricts U.S. participation in UN peacekeeping unless the United States obtains immunity from prosecution. At the same time, these provisions can be waived by the President on national interest grounds. We're joined now by Ken Roth. He is Executive Director of Human Rights Watch. Welcome to Democracy Now!
Good to be here, Amy.
Well, the U.S. will invade a country that takes into custody a U.S. service member or U.S. official?
Amazing as it is, this act of Congress has authorized the President to use all necessary means, which is a reference to military force, to liberate any U.S. service member who might be arrested or detained by the International Criminal Court. And since the court is going to be based in The Hague in the Netherlands, a close NATO ally, this in essence allows the United States to engage in an act of war, to declare war against a fellow NATO ally. It's an amazing act.
How did it happen?
Well, this reflects the depth of animosity toward international justice by, on the one hand, the Bush administration, and on the other hand, the right-wing extreme within Congress, which pushed this through. The Bush administration has a view that international justice is for other people, that the United States, as the world superpower, should be above being accountable to any international mechanism in its compliance with the most basic laws, the laws against genocide, war crimes, or crimes against humanity. And this act is a natural extension of that philosophy.
The U.S. will invade.
Well, it doesn't require the U.S. to invade. In fact, one of the things that's odd about this act is while it does show the depth of animosity toward the court, it also is filled with loopholes. And in fact, it's more a show than it is a reality. For example, as you noted, it prohibits U.S. cooperation with the court, except, and then there's a huge exception, which is to say if the United States wants to pursue Saddam Hussein or Osama bin Laden or any other war criminal, in other words, anybody who the court might be going after, then it can cooperate.
But if it decides to go after Henry Kissinger, that's another story.
Well, obviously, it's free not to cooperate, too, but it could have not cooperated anyhow. So in that sense, the prohibition on cooperation is a prohibition with a huge loophole. Similarly, the prohibition on giving aid to non-NATO allies who might ratify the International Criminal Court Treaty is also accompanied by a huge loophole, which is to say, if the President declares that it's in the U.S. national interest to continue providing military assistance to that ratifier of the ICC treaty, the aid can go forward anyhow. So this is a lot of smoke and mirrors. It's designed to try to scare other governments into not ratifying the court on the hope that they just don't read the language too closely.
Is the U.S. also signing bilateral agreements with countries, one after another, to get them to extradite anyone that could possibly be held or is told to extradite someone to The Hague?
Yeah, well, that's the latest act by the Bush administration. You'll recall that last May, President Bush took the very unusual step of unsigning President Clinton's signature on the International Criminal Court Treaty. Then in June and July, the U.S. basically threatened UN peacekeeping around the world unless an exemption was given to Americans who might participate in peacekeeping efforts. And that was partially won by the Bush administration, although the worst efforts on its part were fortunately blocked by the Security Council. Now what the administration is doing is running around the world and trying to strong-arm governments to sign agreements with it, that should an American soldier be on the territory so far of Romania or Israel, the two countries that have signed these treaties, those governments vow not to turn the U.S. soldier over to The Hague for prosecution by the International Criminal Court. Now, in principle, these kind of agreements are actually recognized by the ICC treaty, but they were recognized on the assumption that governments entering into them would be cooperating with the court. And it was seen more as a routing mechanism because the court gives preference to national prosecutions. That is, if an American is wanted by the court, the U.S. government gets the first crack at investigating and prosecuting the soldier, and it's only if there's a failure of justice in the United States that the ICC would take over. These agreements are really a perversion of what was originally contemplated by the treaty, because the U.S. is trying to enter into these agreements not to simply route a sort of an orderly routing mechanism for soldiers ultimately to be brought before the court, but rather as a way of avoiding the court's jurisdiction altogether, because the U.S. has vowed not to cooperate with the court in any respect.
Finally, where does the court stand today with, well, tremendous opposition from the U.S. behind the scenes for quite a while now, but now it has been established?
Yeah, well, the good news is that the court has jurisdiction as of July 1st. There are, as of today, 77 governments that have ratified. Just yesterday, Colombia ratified, and that's a terribly important ratification, because most observers of the court believe that the first case is likely to come either out of Colombia or out of Congo, two of the ratifiers where there are very serious war crimes being committed and where the local government has not shown the capacity or the willingness to pursue those war criminals itself.
Ken Roth is Executive Director of Human Rights Watch. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
You are listening to Democracy Now! We're going to go to our break.